Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming out here this morning to join us for our interview process. Again, my name is John Paris. I'm the chair of the Asian American Group Endorsement Committee. The Asian American Group has been in existence for about 20 years now. Mike Viswani's been our president for, I think, all 20 of those years?
No,
give or take? Or just the last 10 or 12, only a decade or so. For the last 6 or 7 years, we've been doing panel-style interviews incident to our endorsement process. I know some of you have interviewed with us before. Just to give you a little bit of a background on us, the Asian American Group serves somewhat as an umbrella organization of numerous Asian groups throughout the greater Las Vegas and Clark County area. Regarding the endorsement process, what we do is we invite all of the candidates for all the particular races in. As you can see today, we have a packed house. Our endorsements will, in all probability, be issued sometime around mid-September. We have a makeup weekend of endorsement interviews that we need to take care of. As well, on September 13th, we're having a banquet. It's our annual awards dinner, to which all of you obviously are invited, and we do have invitations for you as well. But that's going to be taking up a lot of our time also. So we plan on releasing our endorsements sometime, I would say the third week of September, I think is when we'd be able to accomplish that. In addition to informing the candidates of our endorsements, we also will be sending out emails with our candidate endorsement lists to the several thousand email addresses that we have compiled here on this dais. As well, we'll be taking out ad space in various Asian periodicals and printing those same endorsement lists. Lastly, on the first day, I should say, of early voting, I think that's October 18th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
We'll be renting out the Harbor Palace restaurant, which is just up the road here on Spring Mountain. We'll be renting it out. We'll be offering people free lunch. We will invite the candidates who we endorsed to appear if they so desire. We will give them all copies of the slate cards of our endorsements, and we will be encouraging them to go vote. Within the Chinatown complex itself, literally 104 feet away from the front door of the Harbor Palace restaurant, is an early voting station. So we do try our best to get your names out and give the Asian community in general just perhaps a better idea as to who the candidates are, and making you as accessible as possible to them so they can make an informed decision when they decide to go vote. With all that having been said, that's enough about us. First question that we're going to ask, and we will start with Erin,
Sure.
Since we're chivalrous here.
All right, well, thank you.
Is this: why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time? And we will be allowing everyone to answer that same question.
Sure.
Please, Erin.
I certainly never thought that I would run for public office. I've been involved in this community and engaged in this community my entire life. Myself and my husband, we created the first and only free pediatric clinic in the state. And I also created a program called Emerge Nevada, which recruits and trains women to run for office. And I worked for a number of years as the political director for Attorney General Catherine Cortez Masto. I was proud to be known in this community as a problem solver without ever having been elected to office. But I watched as my neighbors lost their home, as my friends lost their job, most making just a fraction of what they were making 10 years ago. And people were worried about their retirement. They were worried about how they were going to pay for their kids to go to college. And frankly, what I saw was a Congress that wasn't doing anything about these issues. And so that's when I decided that it was time, as a problem solver, that I roll up my sleeves and run for office and do something to truly help my community. And that's why I decided that I was going to run.
Okay, thank you. David, same question.
The reason I decided to run for Congress is because we have a two-party system, and it's failed us. Every problem that's been created in government was created from the Republicans and Democrats. How can the Republicans and Democrats be the solution? Unrealistic. If you elect a Republican or Democrat, you're going to get more of the same. I can guarantee it. The reason I'm running is because of my platform. No campaign donations, no political affiliation, reapply for government programs and the fair tax. My platform is a solution. We need 3 branches, just like we have now. We need a 3-party system to solve the problems we have. Excuse me. That's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you. Stephen.
You know, I used to work for a newspaper, and I used to work for the San Diego Tribune in San Diego, California. So when I get on the internet, or if I start reading a newspaper, I read it a little bit differently. There was an article about Detroit, and there are two sides of this story, and I wanted to say this up front. But there was one story that really caught my attention. And everybody knows that Detroit really had financial problems. It really had serious, and some of the other cities in Michigan had financial problems. The legislators in Detroit passed a law called PA4, and it gave the power to the governor to put in emergency managers and actually dismiss or fire the people that were duly elected. And so this was a way to take care of, because as I said, there were some real financial problems. So the emergency managers were supposed to really take care of, as I said, there were some real financial problems. So the emergency managers were supposed to really take care of, getting a handle on the budget and getting a handle on the money problems. Thereafter, though, after a certain period of time, there were about maybe a lot of the people that were citizens of Detroit really got very frustrated, didn't like what they see, and they got a referendum together. And it was they needed 200,000 signatures in order to get that referendum on the ballot. And as I said, there are two sides to this story. Some believe that the governor had to do this, others do not. But the important part for me was that referendum. And that's the voters. And they had to get 200,000. They got over the 200,000 voters, and they also got it on the ballot, and it won. So everybody thought, hey, this is, the governor's going to have to start dealing with the people directly. 37 days later, they rewrite the law. One made it referendum proof, and made it go around the referendum that existed. So what does that mean? That means, and what scared me, because I literally got out of my chair when I read it, so this is the scariest thing I ever read. And what it means is that all those people that participated in the petition, all the people that voted, all the people that were in it, were totally dismissed, totally negated, as if they didn't even exist. And I really felt that our democracy was really, we're going down a path here that could get really serious as far as our democracy. And so when I read that, that's what I really, you can complain about it, you can talk about it, but it's not what you say, it's what you do that makes the difference. And so that's what I decided to do something about it, because I was really afraid about our democracy. I'm an old timer. I believe in democracy. I believe in this stuff. And so that's why I got involved. A gray hair guy like me, or white hair, got involved.
And Joe.
Thanks. First, I want to thank AAG for hosting us again today, and want to thank AAG for their prior endorsements. Honored to have them in my previous races. I'm running again for three simple things, and I look at it from a perspective of experience, solutions, and results. We look at the issues that we face as a nation. They continue to be things like jobs in the economy, healthcare, national defense, national security. And I've got experience in all those three things, whether it's being a former business owner who knows what it's like to make a payroll, keeping my doors open during the recession, whether it was as a practicing physician, healthcare administrator, or educator, and as a member of the military. And so what I've done is take those experiences, use that to craft solutions for the issues that we face as a nation, which I've done, introducing legislation that addresses those issues, and then by building bipartisan coalitions, enacting those solutions to get the needed results. And while many will say that Congress hasn't accomplished much, I'm proud to say that since my arrival, I've had 3 bills actually signed into law. I've got 3 other bills that have passed the House by bipartisan unanimous votes that are pending action in the Senate, all of which are directed at issues that impact Nevadans every day. So again, it's taking the experiences that you gain from the jobs that you've had in the past, crafting solutions to the problems we face, and then getting those solutions moving forward so that we have...
Next question, I'm going to start with Joe, and then we'll go in the reverse order. Erin had brought up the do-nothing label, and you had referenced it as well. There seems to be a perception among the public that Congress is somewhat do-nothing, primarily due to the partisan nature, how heavily partisan the Congress is, especially. what you had mentioned that you had some passed some bills with bipartisan support. What ideas do you have to try and minimize that partisan nature of Washington in order to get more accomplished than admittedly has been and quite candidly should have been during the last term?
Well, great question. And I think that what I've been able to accomplish shows that you can develop bipartisan coalitions to get bills passed. Every one of my bills that have passed have been bipartisan bills. Bills that I've introduced that address a lot of the difficult issues that we face, like the sustainable growth rate for Medicare. Myself and Allison Schwartz, Democrat from outside of Philadelphia, got together to introduce that bill. So it's a matter of looking across the aisle for people that you can work with on issues of mutual concern. And while there may seem to not be a lot of action getting done, you got to look at all the things that actually Congress has been able to do, which sometimes isn't getting proper notice. And we just recently passed the Veterans Administration bill, bipartisan bill. We passed the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, another bipartisan bill. We've passed the Transportation Funding Measure, another bipartisan bill. So yes, there's always going to be, as was mentioned previously, some difficulty when you have a two-party system. But when it's time to make those tough decisions and move bills forward that are going to have a positive impact on folks back home, I think we've been able to come together. Certainly, I've been able to draw on relationships that I've developed across the aisle to build those bipartisan coalitions to get meaningful legislation enacted.
Stephen, obviously, the partisan aspect of this question is important to both yourself and David, since you are not running under one of the two traditional parties.
Correct.
What ideas do you have to get around those issues should you be elected?
As far as the partisan idea?
Correct. How would you build coalitions in order to accomplish the goals to accomplish what Congress ought to be doing?
Here, this brings up an interesting point. And one of the things that I have been doing the last 2.5, 3 months is working in the background. And what I have done is gone to neighborhood, to neighborhood, to neighborhood, to neighborhood, to neighborhood, and knocked on every single door in that neighborhood that I was in. And what I did is I knocked on that door. There have been times when people have slammed the door in my face. There have been times when people walk by me and don't even give me a look. I don't exist. I've had people tell me things like I needed a dictionary to find out what they were saying. The difference between all of us, except for David, the difference is that what I have done the last 2.5, 3 months is gone out to the constituents and really find out what's really going on in each neighborhood. What are the concerns for each of these constituents? And I'll give you an example, and I'll get to the answer real quick. But what's happening, for instance, when I was shocked to find out what happened when I met this woman who came out total fear. And that neighborhood happens to be off Boulder Highway on the east and the west side of Boulder Highway. The gangs have moved in to foreclosed homes, and they're producing meth. What they do at nighttime is that they take the meth and blow it through the air conditioner of unsuspecting homes, people that have vents open, and the smell is foul. And so this woman came out, and I really got a sense of, she was just totally terrified. And so, and I went to the Henderson Police Department. I talked to them about it. The community, I talked to the community, and I forgot the actual title of it. But he got back to me in a month, and they started looking into it. And that's only 3 or 4 blocks away from the police department. It's not their problem. They're undermanned. So I think the whole idea, and Joe had mentioned it, which he's right, you build a coalition. And so you find a common denominator that all of everybody, no matter whether Republican or Democrat, they can agree on, or work together on, or solve the problem, as Erin had said. That's what I would probably do, is doing that. But I'm working on another idea, which you already know about on my website.
Well,
We'll talk about that later.
we will potentially get there. We do have 4 people. I do need to keep things somewhat
that's my
balanced.
Answer, though. That's my answer.
David, how would you minimize partisan politics to potentially get more accomplished in Washington?
I'm the solution to politics in the world today. In the world. Because what happens is you have a Republican and Democrat now. And when you have just a two-party system, you get a majority. Joe can confirm this. When you only have 2 parties, this is what we get. When you have 3 people making decisions, a decision's always going to be made. Yes, no, someone else is going to decide yes or no. The way it is now, it's yes and no. Doesn't work. When I get elected, it's going to be historical. Every Republican, every Democrat in government is going to be scared to death for their job and their power. It's going to go right out the door. Because I won with no campaign donations and no political affiliation. The people have had enough. I'm the beginning, I'm the solution, I make it better for everyone. My demographic is young and old, male and female. I am the solution.
Erin.
Sure. No, I share the same frustrations. We have the largest 2-0 Congress in history, and that is really freezing and hurting the middle class. And this needs to stop, and I do think a lot of it has to do with partisan politics. People have known me in this community my entire life. They've seen that I always reach across the aisle. I created a program called Emerge Nevada, which does recruit and train Democratic women, and we had huge success with electing 14 women from across the country. And when I saw how successful the materials I had put together were, I reached across to Republican women and shared and organized and helped them organize their own event. And I think that's what we need to see more of in Washington, D.C. I guess in certain ways I'm a little unique. Many of you know that my father was a Democratic congressman. What you might not know is that my cousin was a Republican congressman. So the Bilbrays really do have a tradition of being bipartisan. And at our kitchen table, all ideas are welcome. I have always been one of those people that we debate and we discuss and we respect the opinions of others. And that's the kind of attitude that I would bring to Congress. And I also just think we really need to focus on losing the mean-spirited nature that we're seeing in Washington, D.C. and here. I have to tell you, when I'm sure all of you get the trackers following you around with cameras, which seems to have become part of modern day politics. But when a tracker actually confronted my then 11-year-old daughter at the time, I thought, we have gone too far. And we need people that are willing to speak out and say, that's not okay, that is not okay. And so I think that will help stop some of the partisan nature if we just have people with common sense values that will work across the aisle, and when they see something wrong like that, they come out and say how wrong it is.
Thank you. One question, or I should say one topic, that's near and dear to many of the people on this panel is that of immigration. Not all of us were born in this country, or our parents were not born here and had to immigrate legally or otherwise, and we'll leave that for another discussion. But the topic of immigration was at the forefront, was at the tip of our tongue collectively about a year, almost 2 years ago, and it seems to have fallen by the wayside. What ideas do you have to move the immigration issue more to the forefront and try and make some good progress towards changing the current status of our immigration laws? Or alternatively, do you think the immigration laws are just fine the way they are, and we can backburner this issue for other more important topics? And we'll start with David.
Well, here's a good example of government. What happens is you set laws. When you have multiple laws on any issue in government, you're going to have the if, and, or buts, and we don't need that. We need laws that are like in the Constitution. Easy to understand, easy to comply with. You want to solve the immigration problem, you secure the border first. Everyone has the same law, the same policy, the same regulation. If it's equal for everybody, it's fair for everybody, then it works for everybody. You secure the border first. You want to come to America? Come to America, fill out an application, wait in line. The way it is now, you have illegals and then undocumented. You don't know what's going on. You had all these children from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala coming into the country. It was a different immigration qualification for them. That's part of the problem. It needs to be uniformed so it applies to everybody and it works for everybody.
And are you referring to the dreamers, as they're called?
Yes.
You have people that are already in this country that have already been given a list of what they need to do to stay in this country. I don't believe that was passed by Congress. Dr. Joe Hack can probably confirm that or not. And then you have people coming from other countries that a different set of rules applies for them to come in this country. You're going to find that when you have law after law after law, how do you know what it is? You know how I know the speed limit's 65? Because I see a sign that says 65. You know who the law applies to? Everyone that drives. Same thing for immigration. It should be the same law, it should be uniform, so it's easy to understand. You want to come to America? Come to America. Fill out an application, wait in line.
Thank you. Stephen.
You know, my wife is Cuban. And so what does that mean? That means that I had to go through the immigration from the very beginning to the end. And not only is it expensive, which we really found out, it was pretty shocking to find out how much money it really cost to go through the process. But I know firsthand what it's like for immigration. And I am for immigration reform. I am for everybody getting into the United States, wherever they may be. And I think David brought up a point of making it uniform. I think the uniformity is really, they have to go through the steps of applying for being a citizen, and I think everybody that applies for it should have that consideration. So I don't divide it up and say, certain people get in, certain people get out. I think everybody has that shot. As I said, I know firsthand what this whole situation is in order to get into this country. And so, I look at it from a much different perspective because I've been through it. And I have been through with my wife, her anxiety, and what she felt, and what she'd gone through, and what she went through with her attorney on this. So I know what this is about. And so, that explains it as far as the immigration. That'll be the answer.
Joe.
Well, certainly we need to fix the broken immigration system that we have, and I think I've been one of the most outspoken Republicans on this. It's been noted both in national and local media. And so we've got to address the individual specific areas that need addressing. People say just enforce the laws that are on the books. The problem is the laws that are on the books aren't working. That's why we find ourselves in this situation. And so it's got to be a comprehensive review, starting with, as was mentioned by David, we've got to secure our border to make sure that we have control over who's coming and who's going. And that's not just our southern border, it's our northern border, it's our ports of entry. Over 40% of those that are here in undocumented status came legally on a visa and just overstayed their visa. We have no way of knowing who those individuals are. So we have to have better enforcement to begin with. Then we need to address the issue of having a viable guest worker program. And that's both for low-skill and high-tech workers. We have a dearth of folks that can fill the jobs that we need filled. Matter of fact, I was just over speaking to the Carpenters Union a couple nights ago. And they were saying that they are concerned because now the construction industry is coming back and they don't have enough skilled workers to be able to meet the demand. And so they need a guest worker program. We have foreign students that are graduating our colleges and universities across the country with master's degrees and PhDs who want to stay here, and we won't let them stay. We have venture capitalists and businessmen who want to come to this country to start businesses and create jobs, and we won't let them in. That's not an immigration system that works. So we need to address that issue. I believe we have to have an E-Verify system. One of the ways that you stop illegal flow is to take away incentives. And let's face it, an incentive is a job. So only those that are here present legally should be able to get a job, and so you have to have a mandatory E-Verify system. This prevents not only those that are here illegally from getting a job, but also prevents against worker exploitation, so it has two folds that we need to address there. We also need to move on to the legal immigration system. When you look at families, somebody who's come, immigrated, has become a citizen, or has gotten their green card, and now they're petitioning for a family member to come, and they're waiting 10, 15 years, that's unacceptable. So we have to figure out a way to speed up family unification for those that are coming through the legal process. Next, you've got to address the issue of the dreamers. Those that know no other country than this one, that should be given an opportunity to become a productive member of society and to be able to go on and have a job, go to school. So we need to address dreamers. And then lastly, we have to address the issue of whatever number you want to put on it, whether it's 11, 12, 15, some people say 20 million, those that are here in an undocumented status, we have to address the issue of what are we going to do for those individuals. Is it a path to legalization? Is it a path to citizenship? But they likewise have to have an opportunity to be mainstreamed within America. And so those are the issues that I would address. My approach is each one should be an individual bill. Because when you get into one large comprehensive bill, it's always fraught with unintended consequences, as we've seen with the healthcare reform law. And the last thing we need is to pass another bill to find out what's in it. Let's do each thing in a transparent, accountable way, addressing each individual area, but making sure we address all the areas that need to be addressed to enact comprehensive immigration reform and fix the broken system that we have.
Erin.
Sure. This is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. My oldest daughter goes to Hyde Park Math and Science Magnet School, one of the best schools really in the whole Southwest public schools. There is about 3,000 slots there's 300 slots, and there's about over 3,000 people that apply. You have to have great test scores, great grades to get in. And on the first week of 6th grade, we all have been to middle school. We know how painful and awkward that can be. I told her to make 2 friends and invite them over for Saturday night to have pizza, go swimming, and spend the night. Her first friend said, absolutely. Her second friend said, my mom won't let me. And I said, I apologize. I should have called the parents anyway. I called the one little girl's mother. Her father was an officer in the military and said, I Googled you. I know who you are. Her daughter was thrilled over. The second little girl I called, and the mother didn't speak English, so her older sister got on the phone. And I said, I understand. I wouldn't let my daughter spend the night at a home that I didn't know either, but could she come over and have pizza and go swimming, and then you can pick her up? And her older sister translated it, and her mom said that was fine. So they came over. These are 3 11-year-old girls. Their cheese is sliding off their pizza, and they're debating inertia versus gravity. These are amazing kids. Because I'm telling you this, when I was 11, that was not what I was discussing at the pool party. Her older sister came to pick her up at 10, and she told me she was a dreamer. She said she also went to magnet schools, also got straight A's, also worked really hard, and when she was 17, she was hit by another car, and the police apologized because they had to come and give her a ticket, even though she had done nothing wrong, but she was driving without a driver's license. And she went home, and she said to her mother, why am I doing this? Why am I studying so hard to get straight A's when I'm never going to be able to get a job? I'm never going to be able to go to college. Frankly, I can't even get a driver's license. And her mother said, you do it for yourself. Now, because of the DREAM Act, she is able, she's working at Starbucks, she's going to college, she's volunteering on my campaign. And so when I look at these kids, I say, why would we limit the best and the brightest from participating in our country? That is always what has made us strong. And so this is something that I would fight very strongly for. And frankly, part of the thing we were just talking about, partisan politics, is you have to be willing to compromise. There is a good piece of legislation on the Senate that has been passed. It's supported by both sides. It has the votes in the House. I would go there and I would sign that discharge position and make sure that we vote on it so that we could get comprehensive immigration reform. You have to compromise in Washington, D.C., or otherwise we are frozen. And these kids are hurt. Our families are hurt by our Congress's inability to compromise.
Thank you. Mike, did you have any questions? We are coming up right at our
No,
almost at our time frame, so.
I'll ask you in the end. Joe, go
Okay.
ahead.
Do we have any other quick questions from the dais?
On the unintended consequences of the ACA, I've been in a conference very recently whereby we're looking at how Medicaid would reimburse some of the elderly in our citizenry, both not only here in Nevada but all over the country, whereby changes in regulations have to happen. I guess what I want to say or want to ask you, and it's a rhetorical question basically, how willing are you to listen to us and bring this up there so that changes can be made? 371 pages to address one particular item, in my opinion, is such a waste of freaking time. And in my opinion, somebody up there is trying to keep their position so that it makes it more difficult for people to understand. And now here we are. We have to take a look at it. We have to spend time. I'm going up to Reno for one day on my own expense to be able to talk to the right people up there. But these things should not really happen. I wonder if, Congressman Heck, you're there right now, and any of the three of the others would probably be there. Can you be able to help us so that we can talk to the right people over there, that they might listen to reason from somebody in this group?
So
Is that possible?
So perhaps to reframe the question, it's basically what promises or assurances can you give to maintain an open door policy to hear from your constituents, because we have issues that will affect our very jobs, our families' livelihoods. So how would you maintain that open door policy? And we'll start with Stephen and just go down the line.
I was just going to explain, as I said right in the very beginning, I'm the only congressional candidate, as far as I know, that has gone to neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood and looked people face to face And so my whole philosophy is, I said I've been working in the background, but I've gotten to know a lot of the issues in the different neighborhoods. And so that will translate, if I get into Congress, that door will always be open. And, you know, and I do listen. And that's the one thing I really learned, though. The important thing is not to say things, but to really listen. And to answer his question, there's something that Joe knows about a little bit, is Laughlin. And I'm just going to just really do this real quick. Laughlin has a problem. And Laughlin, there was a lady that came out of the door in Laughlin that her husband has a cardiac problem. The problem that they're facing, and has to do with the Affordable Care Act, and it needs to be fixed. There are some things that needs to be fixed on it. But their problem is that they can't go from one state to the next. Laughlin has no hospital and has no emergency care. So the people have two choices. One, they go across the bridge to Arizona to get the medical care that they need, or they drive an hour to Las Vegas in order to be covered through the Affordable Care Act. And so there's a lot, you know, to answer your question, I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be really listening to what's really going on. Medicaid, you know, we can get on to whole other issues. I'll go ahead and stop here. But Medicaid expansion, there's a lot to this. And Medicaid expansion, one, emergency rooms for the first time are starting to make money. The bad news as far as Medicaid expansion, the people that are in poor neighborhoods or rural areas, those hospitals are starting to close in some large numbers. So somebody who lives in the rural area now does not only have to travel like 5 or 10 miles, now has to travel 40, 60, or 80 miles to get to the nearest health center. And so there are some real problems. So basically, as I said, I'm going to really listen. And I'm going to do everything I can to really correct the problems that need to be corrected, period.
Okay. Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Joe. So in general, I think, you know, I've shown that we have an open door policy. I pride ourselves on our constituent services. We get over 2,000 contacts a week via phone, email, fax, and we respond to every one of them. In addition, I do town halls, telephone town halls, a cup of joes where I'm out in neighborhood coffee shops, office meetings when I'm here in the district work period. So we keep a very open door. In fact, whether we agree, disagree, a tough topic, not a tough topic, I've had 48 meetings in the last 18 months on immigration reform alone with both advocates and opponents to find out what the issues are. So I pride ourselves, my office prides itself on its constituent services. And to Joe's specific question regarding the health care, look, I've been very, as you can imagine, I've been very engaged in sending letters to CMS, in directly getting involved with specific cases. You know, we thought when we went from Palmetto to Meridian we were going to get better here with reimbursements. Things didn't happen, so I've been engaged with those to try to expedite reimbursements. We've engaged on the 3-day rule for admissions, which is stymied hospital admissions over to nursing facilities. So as a physician, as a member of the Doctors Caucus, we are highly engaged on the issues revolved around Medicare and Medicaid. And so that's an issue that passion of mine, one of the reasons why I ran for office. But back to the initial question, I think our constituent services, we do mobile office hours as well out in the far reaches of our district so that people don't have to travel to us on a monthly basis. So we're out there in the community making sure that we meet with constituents, we hear what their concerns are. In fact, every one of the pieces of legislations that I've passed came from an idea that a constituent brought.
Erin.
So, and to answer your question as well, there is definitely problems with the Affordable Care Act and what we do. But I will tell you this, my husband and I owned a private pediatric practice together, and I saw firsthand what was happening with insurance controlling healthcare in this country. Something needed to be done. Do we need to fix things in the Affordable Care Act? Without a doubt. But what we need is a Congress that instead of when you have a crack in the wall says let's burn down the entire house, fixes the crack. And that's the kind of member of Congress I'll be. As far as accessibility, I'm looking, I think there's 3 of you that have my personal cell phone information. I've always been very accessible. Yes, very accessible to people my entire life here in Southern Nevada. And I too am actually out walking door to doors in the neighborhoods in the community. Have been doing that for several months. And I will say, I think there's actually very few people that know CD3 as well as I do. I literally grew up in those deserts. Somebody from back east I referred to that I used to go hunt lizards. That meant capturing them and putting them in a shoebox. Somebody thought that I was saying I was shooting them, so I just want to clarify. I mean, I grew up in this community. I know this community. People know me. They know how to get it. They know how to access me. It's not a difficult thing, and I will continue to be the same person that everyone has always known, the same Erin Bilbray, who people will always be able to knock on my door and have it opened.
David.
Here we go. This is a great one. The Affordable Care Act. If programs were determined by results instead of good intentions, we wouldn't have any legislation from the federal government, because it's all fails miserably. It's terrific how bad it is. The state of Nevada needs to solve Nevada's problems. Where do you live? You live in Nevada. Nevada needs to provide for you, because then when you need help with something, it's right here in Nevada. When you need help from the federal government, now you got to go to the federal government, then the federal government has to give it to the state of Nevada, and then so on and so forth. When I need to go to the grocery store, I don't go to the federal government. I go to Vaughn's, Smith's, right where I live. That's how it needs to be. Here, I'll show you open door policy. Right here. It's called Twitter. This is how I'm going to make it better for everybody. You knock on my door when I'm in Congress. Who are you? What are you about? I'm going to make you sign a disclosure. I'm tweeting it out. Everybody should know what I'm doing all the time. That's called transparency. When I hear the constituents and the people telling me their problems, it's always the federal government. They're always intrusive, overbearing, deciding rules and regulations and policies. Instead of trying to help everyone, it hurts a minority, and then everyone else it's crushing how bad it works. The Affordable Care Act does not work. I can prove it to you. Medicare, Medicaid. No matter how good these services are, they're running a debt and a deficit in this country. We need to stop and let Nevada handle Nevada's problems. You live in Nevada, you go to a doctor, you go to Nevada. I'm the only one that's going to be transparent, because I have just no political consequence from me. You can ask me anything, and I can give you the truth, and I can give you the solution. Thank you.
Mike.
I have two questions, quick questions. First thing for Joe. Like, you know, last week we had a sad week. One of our reporters was murdered by the ISIL, you know. And looks like, you know, we are not doing much enough for, you know, to go after them and eliminate them. Otherwise, they're going to be coming back right out of the doorsteps. Like, we eliminate the Al-Qaeda, we should do the same thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if you saw the LVRJ article about a week or so ago. I did an interview on foreign policy, and the fact is, unfortunately, this administration has been slow to respond to the issues that we've seen developing in the Middle East. You can't wait for a focus group or a poll to make a decision when you have to take military action or exercise some type of foreign policy diplomacy. And so we should have been more engaged in Syria, where ISIL originally started, but we were not, because the president did not want to engage in Syria. When they first crossed the border into Iraq, we had a prime opportunity for limited airstrikes to try to impede their advance, but we did not. We waited until they were knocking on the doorstep of Baghdad, and until they had already taken over wide swaths of land through western Iraq and Anbar province and up into northern Iraq, knocking on the doors of the Kurds, putting into jeopardy Erbil, as well as the ethnic persecution that we saw against Christians and the Yazidis. The whole issue is we have to take root and take stock of what we can bring to the table. And sometimes it's military, sometimes it's not. But through diplomacy, informational, military, and economic approaches, we should be much more engaged. Look, the United States is the sole superpower. We have lost our competitive edge over the last 6 years to the last decade because we have failed to take decisive action. You've got to be bold, you've got to be audacious, and you've got to be decisive. And this administration is none of those things. Don't forget that ISIL, ISIS, now called just IS, was originally called the JV team by this president, the JV team. Okay? They are now the national champions when it comes to terrorism, far exceeding anything that Al-Qaeda ever put on the table. And it's because we failed to act when we had the opportunities early to stifle their advances. And now, like in most cases, we will be playing catch-up, which will cost us more in both blood and treasure.
I'd like to respond on that, if I could.
Go ahead.
And I, you know, you have to look at the present day, and you have to look at the circumstances. And to put it to you bluntly, the people that we're dealing with are just evil. I mean, they're evil. There's just no ifs and buts about it. But one thing you've got to keep in mind, that all of us have to keep in mind, who opened Pandora's box? It wasn't the Democrats that opened that box. It was the Republicans that wanted to get into Iraq and make things, add democracy, or whatever maybe it was the oil. But do not ever forget who opened the Pandora's box. And here we are today, dealing with opening that Pandora's box. And that's just what I wanted to say.
And I'd like to answer that as well, because I think it's really a bad thing for our country to be so partisan when it comes to foreign affairs. Many of these issues in the middle of the East it's been almost a century. They've been building for a long time. Syria, for instance, this has been, ripe for decades. They created arbitrary borders after World War I that had really did not look into the different ethnic groups in Syria. So I think we need to be calm. We need to have a thoughtful approach on foreign policy and not throw flames, because we are in serious times in this country, and we need to be thoughtful and not so partisan.
Dave, we let everybody else answer. So
I'm real passionate about this one. The reason I'm passionate is because it's in the Constitution. You don't know how lucky you are to live in this country, because our military, we are it. We are well defended, and we have an offense that could go and just annihilate them if we wanted to. We have the ability to do it. It's politics. I hate to say it, but it's politics. I'm not going to make a decision about military when I've got a guy that's been there for 30, 40 years in the military that could tell me better. That's the first thing. That know what you can do, know what you can't do. I start spewing out this and that, and I don't know. I'm listening to generals, chiefs of staff, guys that know what to do. And it's a problem. Someone's going to have to step up and make a decision about it. And it's either sooner or later, but it will have to happen, because it's just how it happens. Once it starts going, it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, to Erin. The Asian community, and especially AAG, we've been around for a long time. We endorse candidates, and we have 80 to 90% success rate. We promote them. But the Democratic Party has never ever, and I've told this to Shelley, I've told Dina, to Stephen, never come and talk to us, all the leadership, the chair and all, never ever approach AAG, say, how we can work together. It's sad and surprising about that, It's really, and I've told Senator Rita about it. I'm going to meet him this week, I saw your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I can't speak for the Democratic Party as a whole. I can only speak for myself. And I know that I've asked you many times, the program emerged that I created, which recruits and trains Democratic women. I many times have asked for good recommendations of women to go through the program, because we do have such a high success rate. And it is something that is a priority to me, to have Asian Pacific Islanders that are elected to office in Nevada. So I can only speak for myself and my outreach, but as you know, we've talked about that for a long time.
Yeah, but because you're close to the Democratic Party, I know that, very close to them.
But I can only speak for my own actions, and it is a priority for me. It always has been a priority for me, as you know.
And the other thing, lately in the newspapers for the last few months, there was a couple of articles that this election mostly is going to be decided by the Asian American community. I just want for your information.
Right.
The RJ said that, not me.